Hi, everybody. I'm Megan Ferguson. My pronouns are, she, her on the screen. And I'm really excited to get the chance to talk to you all today about this topic that's like very important to me. And that's, discussing work-life balance. And it's funny because as I was writing this, I sort of realized that this term is kind of outdated, which goes to show how long I've kind of done this talk for. And also it's kind of funny because it's like, what work is there to balance? I think we're all, the industry is what it is right now, right? But this is also not just like a job that I'm talking about when I'm talking about, this idea of balancing work and life. I'm talking about like our human drive to want to work, right? So not just a job necessarily, but what's in us to like want to create and to do things because we're humans. That's what we want to do. So I also do want to preface this talk by saying that, again, considering the world that we're in right now, it's some of what I'm saying is not going to be as relevant if you are in survival mode, right? Um, a lot of people are right now. So keep that in mind, right? I'm not going to be making anything that's prescriptive. I'm going to be speaking from my own experience. And sometimes this topic of mental health, of learning how to balance your mental health, comes with the onus and kind of puts it on your shoulders to mental health your way into efficiency, right? And I'm not here to teach you how to, um, get sheets and how to manage your time and how to like do the hours so like you can do the thing. Like, I'm not here to teach you how to work better, right? Um, but I do think this topic is something that we all need to normalize discussing because our industry is going to shift and change. So we need to learn how to protect ourselves so that we can have a sustainable career is really the goal. We don't want to, burn out in a flash of glory. We want to be able to work and create and participate as the industry shifts and change. So start with a little background for myself. I've worked in the animation industry, here in Canada specifically, for over 15 years now. And, I've worked on like a range of projects and positions. 2D animation is kind of where I started, 2D character animation. And I'm still like, that's still my bread and butter. I really love character acting. But I've also done storyboarding, I've done design. Um, but a lot of like the later half of my career has also been in supervising, directing, teaching, mentoring. So I do a lot of work with people. I do a lot of work with like training juniors and people who are entering the industry. And that's also why I really love doing talks, that kind of stuff is a lot of fun. And this is sort of how I was born too. Like the animation industry didn't make me somebody who loved to like work and try a bunch of different things. My mother worked in video games in the 90s. She was like did a whole bunch of stuff, which was like amazing at the time. My dad and all my brothers work in trades. So like it's just, my family is no stranger to the 60-hour work week. Okay, like I was born into it. Um, and then so around when I hit college, and I was in college like around 2005, I heard a lot of things about putting in extra time, making sacrifices for the job. Um, there was some of like a phrase that kind of gets tossed around in this area is the 2 a.m. club is the club that gets hired. Basically, like, oh yeah, work late because that's like it shows that you're dedicated, right? Animation's competitive. Your position is disposable. There's a lot of people who want the same thing that you do. You gotta really like breathe and live animation in order to be one of the lucky ones, right? Because it's like the best career in the world. Like you get to draw for a career, you get to like create for a career. Like, isn't that like that? Right? And like I said, being born into like the 60-hour work week, like to me, this made sense, right? Like to me, I didn't buy into everything because I'm a contrarian, but the idea of like really putting your all into work and having that payoff was something that like I definitely embodied I didn't learn that in school. I came in being like, oh, I fit here, right? And I like work too. You know what I mean? I like doing it, right? So when I graduated and I got into my career, I said yes to everything. Everything, right? And I do think self-advocacy is very important. I do think we have to put ourselves in front of people and we have to take chances. But I made it a point to like take every chance I could get to do every extra little thing on the side that I could do. And yeah, I grew and like I said, like I supervisor, animation director, like I did grow, right? Like you can say that I am the example of animation success. Put your nose to the grindstone. Yeah, some years you don't take vacation, but but it pays off, right? And yeah, you can say on paper it did pay off for me, right? Until I hit the point that I could no longer function. And I think this is where I really want to talk about the challenge of this idea of balancing work and life because I didn't quite catch it until it was too bad, right? And working on something, like it's not about a person or a show or a studio. I think a lot of us, it's a multitude of factors when we hit that point where we realize that you've put too much to the side in order to like go, right? And I don't want to be a person who comes up in front of people who are looking to enter the industry or grow in the industry to tell them that that is how you find success when I also nearly lost it because I wanted to quit because I couldn't even imagine continuing, right? And I am not the only person with that story, right? A lot of people have that story. A lot of people end up leaving the animation industry because of it. Relationships get affected because of it, right? And for myself, I was really lucky to have amazing people around me. I was really lucky to have a team and like coworkers and bosses and like friends that supported me. And it was part of some of my coworkers that noticed when I was getting bad, right? Of course, like they see me every day, right? And I was really lucky to be able to take a break. After my worst part, I ended up going to therapy. I'm on anxiety medication. I learned a lot about myself. Um, but as I was healing, as I was kind of stepping back from this pace that I was moving at, right, that I thought was natural. And I ended up working part-time for a while too. I told my bosses and they were really great to like support me. I was like, please, can I not animate for a bit? Can I just like train people? And I could, and that was amazing. That was like one of the main reasons why I really love talking to people. But one of the things I learned about myself was how did it get to this point, and why did I purposefully push myself to do this? Because I had people telling me to work less. I had people around me saying, "Are you okay? You should go home." And I would say, "No." I would say no. So this is where, like, for myself, I have to reflect um, on why did it get so bad and what did I miss, right? How can I make sure that like this doesn't happen again, or rather, like, why am I not paying attention to myself? So what I really want to talk about is what leads us to these kind of crashes, what leads us to this go, and then sometimes just like a poof. I want to talk about our relationship with work and what that means. And then I want to talk about what is actually in our agency to change. Because a lot of times when you talk about like, oh, work-life balance, like, oh, you should get a management app, you are maybe not always realizing what is in your control. So we're going to talk about that too. So first, let's look at the animation community, which is all of you. And for a lot of people, their love of the medium of animation and of storytelling is when you see something that speaks to you on a deeper level. Like I remember, I think we all have that show. that we like look back at. And we like I was just watching, say, like I didn't have this writing down. This is my tangent, natural tangent. I was just watching a Sailor Moon music video from when I was like 11 or 12 years old. And someone had uploaded the music video to YouTube and I was watching it. And I remember what it felt like when I first saw that. And I was like, oh, it's so dramatic. And it was one from one of the Sailor Moon movies. I forget what one. But like, like we have these moments and we want to be a part of that, right? So animation really brings people to it who seek understanding and connection and communication, right? Ultimately, it's not just about the visual on the screen, it's about what we felt when we watched it, right? So animation attracts a lot of very sincere people who are trying to get the thing that's in here, like in here or in here, like just out, right? And I would also say that the industry has shifted over the last like 2 decades to include a lot more types of people than when I was in school. Like, like that's it, my flag. Um, it's really changed. The makeup has really changed. But to me, this also compounds the reality that when people enter the animation space, it's not about jobs or schools necessarily. It's about entering the community. For a lot of people, this is the first time they've found like-minded people, right? For a lot of people, when they go to school, if you are seeking to do this like as a career, if you like, I had art friends in high school, so I was really lucky to have that. But a lot of people that I went to school with, this was the first time they had other art friends, the first time they could geek out about animation and not feel ashamed about who they were. So there's a lot of people entering this journey who animation and this craft, it's not just, you can't make it just a job, right? It's so much more than that. So those are the artists, right? And together as artists, you're going through these high pressure situations. Your school and marking and grades can be really stressful, and like putting together any kind of deadline is stressful. And you hear a lot of stories about like glorified late nights, which I also have, which like isn't healthy. Okay, I'm not advocating for late nights, but the thing about that is that a lot of those come from the sincere creative passion of the people who are doing that work, right? And it results in a lot of us being close friends, and it results in a lot of relationships. I have a lot of friends, like I think about the people I went to school with, and like, oh my gosh, the amount of kids, all the amount of animator kids out there, right? And I think it's because we all have this shared connection with this storytelling medium that is very close to our hearts. Like no one can really get it like we do, right? And that's what makes for me, the community is the best part about animation, right? That's the best part about the storytelling. It's the people in it. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. And so you take this community of very, often marginalized and neurodivergent people, however many, facets of a disco ball, right? Who are sincere and who are finding their people, and if you don't fit in that category, that's fine. Like if you find like I don't quite relate to that story, that's fine. But you do have to recognize that a lot of people do fall into that category, right? It's a big deal of makeup of the animation industry. So you take those people. Now let's pivot to like, let's not take them yet. They're going to sit and just chill out there for a second. Now we're going to look over at basically what is the toxic parts of the animation industry culture. And they're not like limited to animation. They're actually just toxic work culture. It's like animation is not special in that regard. But these are ones that I would say are, prevalent overall. It's probably not going to surprise any of us. So the first one is like sacrifice to succeed, which again, in a way, like it's like a bit of like an old way to kind of say it, but the idea that you need to give up a lot in order to make it, right? No one really talks about the limits of that. Yeah, I do think maybe you have to just like, if somebody does Lent, like, yeah, you have to give up some stuff sometimes, right? Um, but there are also way too many stories of people going to schools and doing talks where they also say about how they miss their kids' birthday parties. That is not an I wish that was a story that was something that I heard in school, almost 20 years ago, right? I wish. But no, that's still a current one. So there's a normalization of the idea of putting aside relationships for the job. Okay. One of the other things that's very common and also leads to a lot of toxicity is the product over process mindset or product over people. Um, and again, this is so common and like it's this business 101 almost at this point. But I think in animation, because we hold up the product so much, the people and the process are secondary to the actual thing, right? How many times do we see, a movie or a TV show that is like breaking the boundaries and doing something amazing, and then we find out that the team on it had a terrible time, you know? And I think that is something that is important to address, right? And granted, we're all going to be on shows now once in a while. We're like, yeah, the process isn't great, but that is the status quo of sort of what is expected. Not a lot of people out here are really, you know, asking how the team is doing after it's done because sometimes the team's on contract and they may leave after, right? So that's something that you need to realize is pretty common. And then this one is just work culture. Your output is your worth, right? Um, I remember when I was in school, I would hear you're only as good as your last frame, or you're only as good as your last scene. I don't believe that. Sometimes I have bad scenes because I'm tired. Let me be tired. I don't feel good. I have a like whatever. Um, but I think the internet and social media has also exacerbated this because our brains really like to pick up on patterns and like to find reasons for why things are what they are. And there is a lot of people I find growing up now that like you're looking at the numbers of followers, how much you're outputting. Oh, if I don't like upload it this time, will I get as many things? And like, and that can really kind of get you in this idea that you have to like gamify everything and you have to like output. And this is also why talks about mental health. If the outcome is your mental health will be better so you can be more efficient at the job, that's not that's not the right kind, right? But that is something that we have to be prepared to push back against. So now you have this culture that obviously is very prevalent, not just within in the animation industry itself, with the glorifying of ultimately what is the product. It's also within just general work culture. So we're getting it from all angles. And then you have a group of sincere people who want to communicate and be a part of something. How are we supposed to find work-life balance in that? Because by the time a lot of us graduate, work is our life. The idea of us to succeed in animation requires us to make it our life. And then when people have crashes or when people hit a very bad spot, sometimes they're approached with, oh, well, have you taken care of your work-life balance? We are conditioned to make this our life, right? And this is not always on the surface. It's not like you have like your bosses coming over going like, oh, you should always be here all the time. But the culture comes out in what we uphold as success, right? If we do not correct the things, if we are making the same mistakes and the same patterns, and we are upholding things that, yeah, may look great, but in the process, whatever, again, that is the status quo of what looks successful. And there's amazing people in the industry who obviously do not feel this way. Like I'm included, like the industry is made up of us, right? So most of the people I know in the industry will not advocate and will push back against, overworking, right? I don't think I really meet too many people nowadays who actually like go, oh yeah, you really gotta like put the nose to the grindstone, right? But also, a lot of us, even though we know we shouldn't, also still participate in overworking, right? And we need to understand that, good intentions aside, I have the best of intentions. I tell people, don't work late. I want to see you gone. But we need to recognize that this is in the environment, and we are coming into this environment already enmeshed in this idea. And the environment also wants us to make this our life, right? And it's not the people. Again, it's just in the result of how things are, right? So we need to start understanding why, it's kind of gotten this way. So here's a few things that I sort of like note as main motivations for us to like overwork, to kind of go like, oh, I gotta, when I say overwork, I mean do more than what like a required work day would be, whether it be on your own personal project or in the studio. I'm talking about not burning the midnight oil, okay? And these are the reasons why people do it. So by and far, the number one reason is fear. Fear is the number one motivator of so many people, right? Where they know they should take a rest, they know they should put the pencil down to get some sleep, but it is the fear of losing the job, the fear of not keeping up with people, the fear of not getting the grade. Oh, if this doesn't work, then that will happen. Um, Fear of retribution. If you lose your job, you may lose your place to stay. I've had friends move out of the city because jobs have been rough here, right? Like a lot of this fear is rooted in a reality, because it's not, you know. But we do need to understand that that is a driver of, of a lot of what we do, right? And this is also where we have to be empathetic about how hard it is, because even though we can feel fear, we have to find those ways to get that time back for ourselves, right? And we have to empathize with the people and understand that for a lot of people, it's not just about losing a job if they're not, good enough. It is about the fear of losing your community, the fear of losing this connection that you have now been through, like the like moments with people, right? Like you forge connections. And I always say the best thing about being an animator is you don't need a job to be one. The community is still there for you. You will not lose it. But a lot that fear is still real though, right? I've had a lot of people be afraid of blacklisting, right? Like they're afraid of being shut out of something that is so important to them. So that is a fear that drives a lot of people to overwork. So the second one is obligation, which is kind of like a neutral. It's like it's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, right? But like it's not unusual to hear people think that their first job, like, oh, I owe them because they took a chance on me, right? Or if you're new to the industry, maybe you think that you have to do ghost hours, which is basically overtime that's not tracked. I've had juniors start on my team practically thinking it's expected of them to do untracked overtime because they have to pay their dues, which is wild to me because this skews all of the numbers, right? So but it comes from a place of wanting to be responsible, of wanting to show people that you are listening and being attentive, and like it's coming from a good place, right? Sometimes people will work later because everyone else is working later, and you kind of don't want to be the only person signing off on time. And it's not necessarily because you think everyone's going to hate you, it's because you want to pull your weight and do right by your team, right? Like these things come from very good spots, right? But that doesn't mean that they're healthy for us. That doesn't mean they're going to be there. That's going to get us to our goal. And this is the other category where I fall into, which is the good intentions category. The good intentions, I'm helping category, right? And I do think that obviously to an extent, like these are good things. But so is the other stuff, right? Like it's reasonable to have a professional responsibility and obligation to go, oh, you want to know something? I feel like it's my responsibility to get this thing done. Like obviously there are it's not an all or nothing thing. Obviously, it's fine to be afraid of losing your job. That is a real thing. I'm not going to ask you to not be emotional, but we do need to understand when that feeling is hindering, not quite helping our goals. So for me, I overworked a bunch because I kept telling myself that I had to do it. And if I'm doing it because it's going to be easier for my team, right? Like if I take on more and I do this stuff, then my team will have less to do. And like I can carry more of the burden. And if I work late and they don't work late, then I'm happy, right? Until I work so much that I can no longer support my team because I ended up working so much and getting so stressed out that my team would not be able to tell me about how they felt about like, oh, if there's an issue or whatever, because they don't want to put more stress on my shoulders, right? Again, good intentions, good intentions. I don't want to stress out Megan. She's already got a lot on her shoulders. So I'm going to be quiet about this thing that like I'm the boss. I should know about the stuff. So that was a lesson for me that like one of my friends started calling me Martyr Megan. And I that kind of made me go, maybe I should reassess, some of the stuff. So the other thing about the overworking with good intentions are helping, right? Like maybe there's a hole to patch and you're like, oh, you want to know something? I'll do the extra work to patch that hole. I am very much a hole patcher. I go, ooh, that needs to be done. Do you want me to do that? And again, that's all well and good. But if you have too many people doing that, then you have a lot of systems run by people with good intentions patching holes, and those holes are never permanently fixed. You know, these things become these things are kind of going in the background that everybody's doing are not being tracked. And what that means is the real problems don't get solved. So there's a lot more reasons for us to overwork. Obviously, like I could go down it, right? Like even family, culture, like there's a lot of reasons for it. But the point of it is I do want you to question yourself about what drives you and learn about what buttons are being pushed. Because we need to find sustainability within ourselves and how we work and understand like, oh man, you want to know something? I feel the need to always overwork and solve problems. That's me. If there's a problem to solve, I got to do it. So for me to make balance for myself, I have to learn, oh, I really want to step up and solve the problem. I have to make sure I don't do that all the time, right? So it's very personal. I can't tell you why you overwork. You're going to find your own special reason, but do start paying attention to what is driving you for these things. And I think what helped me sort of reframe my so how I thought about work, because in my head I was like work-life balance, work-life balance. I have to like balance, I have to do both these things. Once I started seeing my work as a relationship, it helped me not see it as a separate thing outside of my life that I had to balance with my life, but it was a part of my life that was an important relationship like anything else. Like we have multitudes of relationships like in our life. And I think framing our work as a relationship, it allows you to ask different questions to make you reassess what you want out of your job. So I'll kind of give you an example. But also going to have some iced tea. Um, so honestly, like any relationship, it's sort of up to you how much you want to invest, right? There's relationships that are friendships, that are relationships that are full-time partners. Um, Everyone is going to have a different relationship with work. I know people who can go into work and they can work their full 8 hours and then they can go home and like do their own project and like, and like, I don't know how they do it, but they do it. And they have found a way to make it work for themselves because that's how they function. For me, I can't do that. For me, I try to work the same hours as someone else and I end up doing worse work. I learned from myself, I have to have a cutoff because if I start overworking, if I put in, I sort of have a limit to like overtime hours that I will do if I want to do extra work, because I know at one point the quality of my work is going to drop if I don't rest. And also I'm going to get grumpy, and that's not cool. And I stumbled a bit until I learned that about myself. But we cannot compare ourselves to other people and how they function within the industry. If someone is working at a pace that to you is unhealthy, that you're not failing by working at a different pace. You're a different person, right? How what you get out of your relationship with work and your life is going to be different than other people, right? And this relationship will also change as you grow, right? This is something that is fluid. And this is why things that kind of get you to like min max your job and like do this thing and you'll find this success, like there is no answer to that solidly, because you're going to have to relook at your relationship with work as you get older. How I was functioning in my 20s, like most of the reason why I crashed was because like I was not changing how I was working. I we can't keep like doing the same hustle in our early 20s. I'm 40 now. It doesn't work the same way, right? And for me, like I have a lot more important things in my life now that I'm 40 that I didn't when I was 20. But if I was to meet someone who's starting their animation journey, I would not tell them that what they want or the way they're working is wrong for them, right? I'm not going to make that prescription on them because I had energy when I was in my 20s too, right? So to each their own, right? But this is something that you're going to have to look at and reassess as you get older, right? And get into that habit overall with life. Is this job working for me? Is this way I'm approaching my career? Is it working for me? Is it paying off? Um, and then of course, like as a relationship, like is it toxic? Have you seen your family in a while? Are people worried about you? And I think that's something that for a lot of us, like having rough times is like, having a rough project. They exist, right? And sometimes we get out the other side going like, whew, okay, gang, huh, you know. So this isn't about like the ups and downs that are natural and come with life, but I'm talking about cycles here, right? If you are unhappy, if you feel like you are not appreciated, if you are spending all of your time with this thing that makes you feel bad, like, girl, you're in a bad relationship. Get out of there, right? It's like, but it's tough. That doesn't make it any less hard. This is the thing. It doesn't make it easy to do. It's still very hard to do, right? So I'm going to give you a little test to see if you need to start reassessing your relationship with work. Okay. And it's like one simple question. So, do you feel uncomfortable with taking time off for not being productive? Does it feel uncomfortable to take time off? For me, straight up yes. Straight up yes. It took me a while, like even in my house, for a long time, I felt like I was going to get in trouble if I wasn't doing something. you know, I think a lot of people will say yes, it does feel uncomfortable. And, there's a bunch of reasons. For a lot of people, like maybe it's like, oh, if I'm not doing this thing, what am I going to do? Some people may be afraid of how that reflects on them. I've had, people was working with someone who was worried about taking too long of a vacation, even though she was like going to visit, her long distance partner. But it's like, oh man, I don't want to take too long because, like, what if that, oh, and she felt so bad about it too. And it's one of those things that you can't just tell someone, oh, don't worry about it, because there's a reason why we feel it. There's a reason why it's uncomfortable. And it's because it's tied into all those other things that I listed about why we overwork. It's fear or it's obligation, and it's something you have to practice early, right? It's not going to go away. If you feel uncomfortable about this premise, it is not going to get better if you don't work on it. Otherwise, you're going to be in your career or working and you are going to have the same anxiety or the same feeling of like, oh man, like I need to do something. So this is part of us, again, pulling ourselves away from this concept of like we are our work and our output, right? And for some of you, you may not relate. You may say, I love my time off. I don't know what you're talking about. I get my time off and I crash because I've been working so hard, which is also me, right? A lot of people like go, go, go because it can be very stressful and you can get that crunch time at the end. And then it's like, I don't want to talk about animation at all. I'm just going to crash. Don't see me in 3 weeks. And both of these are unhealthy relationships. Both of these are bad, right? Both of these are a sign of an all or nothing, like an unsustainable sort of way of working, right? And it's never gonna, you're never going to be 100% neutral. I think because we care about what we do, emotions are going to be a part of it. It may always feel kind of uncomfortable, right? But you have to start somewhere. And I'd rather people start earlier. And you're straight up, it's gonna feel like you're doing something wrong. And that's how you know it's working. That which is terrible. I wish that was not, I wish that was not the truth. But it's true, right? Is that it's going to feel uncomfortable. Real work-life balance is uncomfortable because we have conditioned to give too much to start. So it's gonna feel like it's gonna feel wrong. But this is why I talk about it, because sometimes that feeling of wrongness, we go, oh, I don't know, this feels wrong. It means I must not be good enough, or maybe I shouldn't do this. No, no, no. You should still do it. That feeling is not you. That feeling is the toxicity of the industry and all that kind of stuff. Okay. How are we doing for time? Can you give me a thumbs up?
We're doing good.
Okay, good. Um, so now that we kind of understand, I've kind of gone over like what motivates this, like how do we pull this all apart, right? Because it's like, great, we have we now know that there's a lot of amazing talented people and an industry that's like ready to kind of like chew them up. What do we do about that? So now is the point where I can give you some solid tips on what we can do to help ourselves build this skill, because this does not come from, like I said, like a management app or a spreadsheet. It comes from the skill of introspection of what we want out of life, what's working for us, and what makes us tick. So here, get on my list. Okay. So obviously how you get through things is unique to you for you as well. But this is what I need for myself. So the first thing that I tell people, and oh, these are not in any specific order either. They're all just like a mishmash. They're like the animation principles where like they're not, each one of them has like a different vibe and they're not like in any particular order. It's vibe based. Um, so this is something that I have told to people for years. I've told my students this, and it's never give 100% of yourself to your job. And I think that is something that I think it's a message that more recently, like people are understanding, like, yeah, that's good. Uh, and but we have to like remind ourselves of like what that even means, right? Because I think a lot of people like you want to give it your all, right? What does that look like? It is not all of yourself. What that means is you are not putting your physical and mental health on the side, okay? You need to give the job what the job needs. The job does not require 100% of yourself. And what I'm saying is like, you're not there all hours, you're not dedicating your life to this job. If a job requires that of you, it's toxic. Okay. Jobs should have proper boundaries and expectations. You should be able to go, these are the things that I need to do, and then I can do those. And that's what you need to give your job. Or so, like an example, when I have a team, I generally like to tell them, my animation team, I'll give them sort of like a list of what is in their job expectation. And for me, that's like, you're doing your 8 hours a day, but you're taking your breaks. You know what I mean? Like I'm asking for a focused work day, but I'm not like strict on it. I want people to communicate if they're struggling with something. That is more of an expectation for me that people need to do. they have to communicate than the quota, right? Because if someone's not hitting quota or struggling with quota, they need to communicate. Communication is the most important thing. So for me, obviously, like I try to bring those expectations forward to my team, but that's because I want them to know where the boundaries are. We have to have proper boundaries with that relationship and know what that looks like, what 100% looks like. And it shouldn't be yourself. It should be what the job is. And kind of speaking of the job, this is another thing that's very important to understand is that the factors are not always in your control. So I think when people overwork and they kind of find themselves spiraling, there is this idea that the work they are given must somehow be doable in the time that they have, right? It's the same with like when you're given like assignments, all depending, or like, with deadlines. Obviously, these things are tracked to a certain extent, they work to a certain extent. But I found with a lot of like newer people to the industry, that like they really think that obviously it must be doable, right? I'll give you an example of how it can sometimes not be. So I was working on a project and with my team, and my team was doing fantastic. Oh, I mean, my team is always fantastic, but they were really hitting the quality that I was looking for. They've really applied themselves in the workflows that I had taught them. They were communicating really well with their supervisors. Like everybody, I was like, heck yeah, right? But people still weren't hitting the quota I had set. And this was an experience for me where through sort of, figuring out how to mitigate the deadlines and all that kind of stuff with like, quota not being hit, I did end up telling my team eventually that like, it's been hard to hit the quota. Obviously, we've all noticed that. But the issue was I set it too high. You know, that happens sometimes, right? And it was important for me to let my team know that it wasn't their fault because I knew as a fellow artist, they were probably looking at that number that I had set going, well, if this was set, obviously it's doable, right? If I'm not hitting it, there must be something wrong with me. Maybe I have to like work more. Maybe I have to go home and learn more. And this is where I think we have to realize that like pushing ourselves and learning more isn't always the solution. Sometimes the solution is going, oh, maybe this wasn't meant quite, maybe this didn't quite work out the way they wanted. And it's not on me. We still have to work on these things. Uh, like I said, like a lot of us have been on projects that were rough to get through. Maybe it was over scope. We've all been on projects that have been over scope, once in a while. Um, and you kind of get through it, but you don't want to take it to heart that it was a struggle. A struggle doesn't always mean that there's something wrong with your work. There's so many factors out of your control within a production pipeline. You can't set the quality expectations. You can't set the quota expectations. You can't set the design expectations, right? The rig expectations. There are so many things out of your control. And when you're, struggling either in the job or struggling to find the job, I think obviously that's going to hit your confidence, but you have to realize that a lot of this isn't a reflection on you. It just is. So you have to keep that in your mind so you don't overwork because it's that insecurity of like, oh, I need to get better, I need to get better, I need to get better that drives people to burn out when sometimes it was never possible to hit in the first place. That happens. That happens sometimes. The next thing is that will help out is check in on yourself and have other people check in on you. Okay. Like if it wasn't for the people around me going, Megan, are you okay? You're getting a little much. And I told them, I'm fine, I'm fine. Me mid panic attack, I'm fine. But I I could not gauge myself. I was working so much and I was like doing like the 60-hour weeks. I was not taking days off. I was working, 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 working. And I became numb to my own feelings. So I could not catch how bad I was getting. The people around me were the ones who encouraged me, like, hey, you need to talk with someone. Maybe you should go to the doctor. And that was that was really important because a lot of these people too, I was not super investing in. I was just working. So the people around you notice, and so it's important to always have someone that you can trust that, can tell you if they're concerned about the way you're sort of functioning. And if you do understand how you function, like I know I can get into modes where I put my head down and I gotta work, I gotta do this. If you have to do that, then ask for help from your friends. Hey, can you like check in on me in a few days? Or maybe like, can you help me meal prep, right? Ask for help from friends to help you prepare if you do have to come up on a deadline that you feel like you can't do it in the healthiest way. Me, same Z's, right? Like, I'm not saying this as, like I said, an all or nothing. We are going to hit points where we go, I think I have to do a lot of extra time and I can't think of any way through this. Okay, but ask for help. Tell the people around you, I'm going to be having a really rough time doing extra work. Do you mind if like we go, can you help me go grocery shopping? Or, maybe in the middle of the week we can have like a movie night. So I can just take, do something that allows you and reminds you that this is a temporary solution and you're keeping the lines to the outside world, right? You're making sure you're not getting sucked into that whirlpool, which is only going to suck you down to the bottom, right? This next one is something that actually would be number one on my list if I put it at number one, but I'll say it now. And it's about knowing your rights. It's about knowing your labor rights. It's about learning the history of animation. And a lot of what we're going through right now um, is going to lead people to burnout because they think the animation industry is going to be destroyed forever. And okay, we have to work really hard to make new things. We've been through this cycle before. We will be through it again. The more you learn about animation history, the more you learn about the artists that have preceded us, the more you will realize that, like, oh, dang, they did it. I can do it too, right? A lot of these people had ups and downs in their careers. A lot of people were not like straight through animators their entire lives. So I think we need to not to dismiss the challenges of the time that we're facing, but to normalize it in a way to say we are just as resilient as the people before us and we can build off of what they left, right? And I think not knowing that, and a lot of people when they start don't know about their labor rights. I certainly did not know that when I started in school. I had no idea. Um, when we don't know these things, fear will fill in the gaps for us, right? If someone doesn't know what their rights are and they feel like they can get fired at the drop of a hat at any moment, if they don't understand like how to function, like look at a contract, the fear fills in the blanks. The more knowledge you have, the more you're just, confident with what your rights are, the more you'll be able to go, okay, I know I feel like I need to really work, but I know I'm not going to get fired if I don't do overtime this weekend. Right? Because, like, that is something that really drives people. I've had people like not, like, they literally think if they don't make quota, they're going to get fired. And it's like, no, no, this is, we're not kicking you out like the next day. Like, but that's part of the misinformation, right? When people are afraid, they keep it in, they don't say anything, right? Learn, ask questions, be curious, and learn about your labor rights. And these are things that are going to empower you again as the industry shifts and changes, because it's going to change. It's going to change, changing right. Like it's the industry is just as much in flux as we are, as people growing, right? So we have to be adaptive. The next point is kind of like along the same lines, which is find community. And I'm putting community in a different kind of category as friends, because to me, community is also a different type of relationship. One that, just like work, is part of your whole life. It's part of the whole faceted you, right? And I'm not even necessarily just talking about the animation community when I say find community. It can be any community that you want. You are a multifaceted human being. It can be a charitable cause, it can be a hobby you like, it can be local, it can be on, it's whatever makes it accessible to you. Because I think one thing that we all have to curate, and one thing that will help you not get sucked in to the things that make us overwork, is when you can use your skill, your artistic voice for something that brings back to the community or gives back to the community in a way that has nothing to do with money or virality or things like that. Being able to do art for maybe a charitable cause that you like, maybe starting up like a monthly group or even a bi-monthly group, right? If you want to do every other month, like, because like don't get like, listen, I talk and I'm very approachable, but I'm also like an introvert, right? So like I don't want to be out every weekend. Start with what is accessible to you, and that may be a once a month thing. It may be once every 3 months, but find something that allows you to feel self-worth and connection that has nothing to do with your output, you know? And you can still use your art to help out, but like it's not it's different. And I mean, a lot of those people will like love that too. But I do think that this is something, and like different charity work too, just something that allows you to kind of um, interact with people and other circles. We need to like live to animate and to create, right? So, okay, and this is my last one. Okay, this is my last point of like what you can do to help balance out all the chaos. Um, which is you need to give yourself more credit. Yeah, because the amount of times I hear people say, and I said it too once, I think, that animation is all I have. That, oh, if I didn't do this, I don't know what else I could do. And I think when we really pigeonhole ourselves into one thing, we're not giving ourselves enough credit. I actually think if all of us could not do this job, we have still the same core creativity that when we started, and we can apply that to so many things, right? I like doing public speaking. I like doing teaching. And I think a lot of us have a lot of different skills. So that's not, I mean, obviously I'm still animating. I'm just not saying to like, shift around. But I think that sometimes, again, it's coming from this fear and this insecurity that like we're only as good as the art that we produce and we output. And I'm saying the thing that makes you good at that loves that, there's so much more of it in you that can be applied to so many things, right? So be confident in yourselves that you will be able to pivot and to adapt to a shifting industry, right? And not feel like you are, um, that you don't have agency, that you're kind of limited. You're not limited. It's the industry that is limited. We are not, you know? Um, so we have to really practice not to box ourselves in, because it's with our different ways of thinking that we're going to make something new, right? The industry is changing. We have a chance to break some of the toxic cycles that we have been in. And you exist fully outside of animation. You're a whole person. If animation wasn't here, you would still be here and you would still be creating. It would just be in a different form. So I can only talk, obviously, this whole thing is from my own experiences and observations. But this is important to me because this is the health of our industry, right? We make up our industry, and we can't keep burning out and like being replaced and burning out. We have to find a way to um, make our careers longer so that we can keep teaching each other and help us all kind of like, build something better. And as hard as the culture is, it's like it's not our fault that it is this way. I think it is something that, just like I said, other kind of work cultures, it's very ingrained, especially like in North American culture, actually a lot of work cultures. But we are a part of it. We can change the culture. It got that way because people thought that way. And yeah, for a while it paid off, and it doesn't anymore. Okay. The culture is us. So I do think that the new messages and people, entering animation are understanding that they don't want to do those same cycles, you know? Um, but it's something that we have to do all together. It can't just be a few people. We all have to introspect and learn the skills to say no. Um, it means, as a group, we stop doing ghost overtime together. It means that as friends, we're keeping an eye out on each other. And yeah, maybe we're like cooking food for each other when someone has to do the late nights, but we don't glorify it. And we accept that, like, we don't want this. Sometimes we have to do it. Sure, like, I'm not going to make a prescription for you guys to never do extra work, right? Like, I've done it too. But I think we need to really start recognizing that, like, this can't be normal. We have to go, okay, I'll do it now, but this isn't great, right? And a lot of this sometimes comes with uncomfortable truths. Like for me, I was a lot of going, oh, I also contributed a lot to this scope creep over time. So the more we unmesh ourselves, the more we untangle ourselves, you will find your way to real balance because you can't do that until you figure out what you want from this job. Because otherwise, we're just holding our hands out and the industry is putting this impossible weight onto it and it tips and we blame ourselves for not being able to shoulder the burden, right? So that's my that's my ramble. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah,
That
and I'm
was
excited for any
awesome.
questions. I don't
So
know if I
much
was
of
good
what
for time.
uh, it was all worth it. Like
Oh, okay, I
every
was
ounce of it
close.
was. I didn't want to stop anything because it's like, okay, we've got questions, but this is all pure
Yeah,
gold.
yeah. Well, I'm more than happy to like stay a little later and answer
Oh, okay.
questions because I did get on some tangents as is tradition. So
Well, we do have quite a few questions here, so we'll dive right in so we can answer as
yeah,
many as we can.
absolutely. Yeah.
So the first question here is, how do you balance work, life, and as a student, also continuing to learn and build your animation reel? How do you balance all of these multiple things and also figure out what you might need to drop or what should be kept?
Yeah, I know it's tough, right? Because there's no real answer. And I think like especially when you're starting out, you are learning what your capacity is, right? So someone else's capacity may be more than your own capacity, which is fine. I think for myself, I always try to think about what is going to strengthen the other things. So for me, especially if you're early in your learning, the industry right now is not great for jobs. You know what I mean? I would call this time like a hunker down and build our skills and keep our head above water sort of time. So I would say for now, work on your core. If you're a student, the best thing you can do is work on your basics and your core because that will always be like everyone will always want that at any point in time. I think a lot of people are jumping a little bit fast into the idea of what a career looks like when, I think, the rise of like indie animation and stuff kind of adds to that. But I think settle down for something a little longer, and allow yourself some grace and try not to do everything all at once. When I teach animation, and let's say someone's doing an animation and it's like, oh, this is like the arcs and the mechanics and then this and then that. And it's like all these things I gotta do. And I go, okay, let's get to the core. Let's just work on your arcs. Let's just choose a few things. And there is no wrong answer. You will have time to get to all the things. There isn't I know it feels like a rush. I know the culture makes it feel like we got to do this stuff. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's again that fear that we're going to be left behind, that fear that like if we don't do this, we're going to miss out. You will not miss out. My recommendation would be if you are a student, is to really focus on solidifying your core and not trying to rush past it too much to make like a flashy demo reel. Yeah.
That is really good advice. One of the biggest things I tend to see so often is you're trying to add acting and all of this extra flash and pizzazz and whatnot.
Yeah.
But if that core isn't solid, none of the rest matters. But if you get
Yeah,
that
I can
core
see the
solid,
basics from a mile away.
yeah, exactly. But if that core is solid, you could have the most like meh looking, like it's not rendered, it's just a basic Maya play blast. It's nothing fancy, but it's gonna pop off the page and it's gonna come to life just because that core is that
Yeah.
foundation is just rock solid.
It's always the boring sustainability that will
Mhm.
it's very much the tortoise and the hare.
Yes.
Like it is. It is. So yeah.
So the next question here relates back to the thing that you were mentioning about not being afraid to go, hey, I can't finish this in time. Hey, I
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I can't get this. Do you have any
yeah.
advice for dealing with a job that wants me to keep skipping things like birthdays and uh, these special events and wants me to just keep working to those unrealistic deadlines?
Mm. See, that one's tough because like that really depends on again if you're in survival mode, right?
Hmm.
I think the reality of right now is that jobs are hard to get. And so the idea of leaving a job that you know like is asking you to do that is kind of an impossible thing to do. I would say that it is something, especially if they're asking you to work through holidays, I would try my best to, if you can, book off the days. Um, maybe make maybe write like an email saying like, hey, there are some days that are very important to me. Like this person's birthday to me might as well be a holiday. So, and I think overall, I think advocating and being very clear about what your expectations are is not an unprofessional thing to do, right? It's just treat it as factual, right? They are treating a lot of things as factual. Studios will treat a lot of things as like, here are the numbers, here are the things, everything's like do 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 do. So we can also function that way and go, hey, so here are the things. I would like this day off. I've booked it here in advance. If there's any questions, like sometimes you need to send emails and as I'm just letting you know that again, reminding you that next Friday, now will this result in uh results? No, maybe, but I think for myself, we can't control the outcome of stuff. We can't, like, who knows, right? But the practice of self-advocation, the practice of communication, that is the real skill that you're building, right? So I think regardless of the outcome, because you can't control the outcome, you can't control if they'll listen to you. You can't control if they'll see you some sort of way because you have clarified boundaries or said no to something. But the process in which you're practicing is the skill that will set you up for your career. Because it's not just about like asking one job or trying to do things with one job. It is the practice of feeling uncomfortable in
Hmm.
saying what your needs are. And even if it doesn't work, that is the process that pays off. So I hope that makes sense because
That makes a lot of sense.
it's tough. Yeah, because
Yeah.
like we gotta keep our jobs.
And we have another question kind of along the same vein.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on letting a studio or your higher ups know you won't be able to finish something on time or pointing out areas that aren't working in the pipeline without coming off as lazy or simply complaining? How do you approach that in a
Yeah.
professional, like clear way that gets the idea across versus just going, man, these people don't know that
Yeah,
animators should just
absolutely. Yeah, because we don't want to get to that point. We don't want to be resentful of our team, right? We don't want
Mhm.
interdepartmental sniping. We don't want, we're all of us are trying our best out here, right? We're all under the same pressures. So if that happens, I would say like, first of all, if you are finding that your work, you're seeing a red flag, either it's like too much, or maybe you're stressed, or maybe you're having a bad week and like it's not. The first thing I would do is to acknowledge sort of like where you are, what the information is. Hey, I have this much done. I can get this much done. I am concerned that I cannot get this done. When you say these things, and you can, send an email to your supervisor, whoever's kind of like in the next line of success, whoever your supervisor is, do it as soon as you feel like there is a red flag. As soon as you start going, I actually feel like I usually what I tell people is if you are afraid, if you're looking at your scope of work and going, oh my gosh, I can't get this done, red flag, say something about it. Go, hey, more than happy to do this, but I am concerned that I'm not able to do this within my normal method. Can I get help with planning it or maybe finding ways to simplify, right? So you can, maybe they're like, maybe it's like you don't have to follow the board as closely, right? And again, sometimes the outcome is they'll go, you have to do exactly the thing, right? But it's the practice. So I do think that bringing it up early so that you can give the information and give them time to reply, approach it with, like, again, a professional understanding of like, my expertise says that this is a little red flag. I want to let you guys know, but I am also like looking for solutions and would like to work on solutions. So kind of approach it not that there's a problem, but that you and your professional expertise have seen a snag and you would like to address it before it gets too late. You know, if you are someone who, there's things that you go, man, if we could do this or if we could do that, and it would be so much better. What I would do is probably send like you can ask, whoever, who's an appropriate person, maybe to send observations to, right? Maybe it's like a production manager. And what you can do is send an email and say, hey, I have noticed a few observations and I would really like to, bring them forward. And just as like a team member, right? Um, Obviously they may go, no, we don't want anybody's opinion. But I think, and I'm someone who does it all the time. Like I am someone who has gotten a lot of my opportunities because I've put myself forward and say, I have noticed this. This is my solution. I've noticed A, B, and C has led to D. So I was thinking this, just an offering of information for you, right? So treat it as neutral, treat it as information. Do not treat it like a critique. And then that way it won't come off like, anyway.
That's really cool. I really like the emphasis on the communication part, not just simply complaining or here you go, I'm walking away. I'm out of this now.
Yeah.
You fix it. But actually
And
having
I,
that kind of a
yeah.
dialogue in there.
Well, I think too, when we bring stuff up, I've also noticed that like oftentimes we may bring up a problem, and obviously we don't have the context of what's causing that problem, but there's usually a very human reason for it. I remember that somebody, one of the departments that was, late on their deadline because they were struggling with it. They were struggling with their deadline, and they brought that forward where it's like, oh, this thing, right? And it was kind of like the sort of complaint where it's like, here's the problem, it's causing this issue, we need to fix it. And for me, I go, okay, but like what caused the problem though? Like we're struggling, but I need a little more information to dig in. So like how late are you? What really slowed you down? Right? What within this was different from that time? Right? So there's a lot of nuance to be had. And I think making sure that you're also giving information in a neutral state is really important. If you are feeling frustrated, if it is like a thing, you're like, oh man, if this, maybe that also means a lot. But generally, people don't think about communicating these things until it is like a frustration, right? So I try to treat it as neutrally as possible.
Nice. We have another question here. How would you keep up with those who will or are sacrificing their health to make it, putting in that 200%? While we're trying to stay healthy, how do we not fall so far behind that we aren't even chosen over those who are just going to burn
Yeah,
themselves out?
yeah. I think the thing with that is you don't keep up. I think that's the hard thing. I think asking it, that's the fear. That's the fear is that you're going to be left behind. The answer is you're not going to be left behind. Yes, there may be things that like I'm not going to say that if somebody is like really like going nuts and like busting their butt and like doing, I'm not going to say they're not going to be like, picked over you. There's always like reasons why someone will get a thing over another person. But the factors in that are so varied. They're so varied. And a lot of the time, especially now, where it's like, jobs are going to be tough, like, yeah, it may feel like anything that can give you the edge will get you that job, but it's not sustainable, right? It is something that if you do for a short amount of time and you plan to do it for a short amount of time, maybe, but also, this is what I'll just kind of tell you what I say to people when they start on my team, when I tell them not to do ghost overtime. And I go, if you work a 60-hour week and your stuff looks great, but I don't know you worked a 60-hour week. I think you worked a 40-hour week. I'm going to expect you to deliver the same thing, right? Like I'm going to think that you did that within 40 hours. And I'm going to go, oh, wow, great. Wow. Oh, perfect. And I think you're fine. But if you worked a 40-hour week and your run cycles are kind of janky, that's fine. Let's work on your run cycles together, right? Because I would rather teach you how to improve on the things that you're shaky with than people trying to cover up the mistakes. That's not you learning. That's just you putting work in and work in and work in and work in, right? Again, it's the slow and steady wins the race. Yes, there are going to be people who you will see shooting by you, but the industry does not work in that way. Like I went to school with someone who, when we graduated, he didn't get a job. A lot of us did, he didn't. And he wasn't in animation for like I don't know, like 7 years. Um, and he came back and he hadn't worked in animation for like a long time. And he came back and he was one of the most reliable people on my team. He hadn't done it forever. It was like his first animation job since he had graduated. But the experience that he had learned also doing other jobs made him one of the most reliable team members. And he went, even though like compared to the rest of us, like he started later, he got right up to the same level that the rest of us were like that. You know, there is no, like I said, we're going to have a different relationship with work. Our path to what our job looks like is going to be different to other people. So the answer is you're not going to catch up. There is no catching up. They're on a different path than you are, right? And they're going to function a different way. And there, don't get me wrong, there is still that urge, right? I'm still scared too. Like it's a very human, artistic urge to see other people progress and going, what's wrong with me that I can't do that? And it's and that's tough. That's tough, but there's nothing wrong with you. The thing is like we need to see it as it's different but equal. You know, some people get jobs right away and then cannot sustain that job. There are people who don't get jobs right away and sustain the jobs. And there's also examples the other way. There's so many different examples. People who start young, people who have different careers before they start in animation, right? And the more you learn about the industry and the more you talk with people, the more you realize that what success looks like is different for every single person. So, um, I don't discount how challenging it is, but really you have to just kind of go, okay, whew, well, they're really progressing, but this isn't a race. This is just
Mhm.
about your own development, and we can develop ourselves in so many different ways.
This is something I've seen a lot of students kind of have a idea about, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong. There's this idea that, okay, this other person is working 200%,
Yeah,
and they're going to go through, they're going to get hired, and they're going to keep working 200%, and everyone's going to keep hiring them, and like, they're just going to, sorry, I've got a cat that
yeah, yeah.
got elbowed in the
I had to
head
keep
while
mine
I
out
was
of the
gesturing.
room.
There we go. Now she's going to be happy. Uh,
Aw.
so you have these people who are going to be working 200%, and then they're going to get hired, and they're going to keep working, and they're going to just
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
flourish. Well, if I work at my, like you said, tortoise in the hair
yeah,
pace, I'm never gonna keep up. But really, what ends up happening is, sure, they might work at 200%, get hired, but like you were saying, once they're hired, very few studios want that person who is putting a ton of ghost hours and messing up the entire
yeah.
production. So
Absolutely,
even
yeah,
though they're gonna still grow because they're like
of course,
doing
yeah.
all of
People are
this work,
working. Yeah,
yeah, they're going to burn out and then people won't want to keep them. So they're going to slow down at some point, whether they
yeah.
want to or not.
And we don't function well when we're burnt out. It is something that we we have to like figure out for ourselves.
Hmm.
And it does feel weird. But this is the other thing too. So what I've noticed with also a lot of juniors is because especially in school, when you're learning, you want everything you do to be like that's it. Like that's 100%. It's like the best thing I could do and I revised it. I made it really good. And now it's on my demo reel and my demo reel is like really good and crisp. Um, I you cannot put 100% into every scene. You can't make every scene really good. And I have seen some of the most hotshot animators who do gorgeous animation struggle on meeting quota because it's hard for them to hand something in, you know? And I tell people sometimes like, what's your 7 out of 10 look like? Don't give me a 10 out of 10. I can't, we're on a deadline here, you know? What's your 7 out of 10? What's your 6.5 out of 10? Because if you're not feeling well, if you're not at 100%, you can't do that all the time. Like, what happens if, like, you're just having a rough week or, you have a lot of other life stress? A lot of people only know how to do their 100%. They only know how to do only their very best work, and handing in anything less than their best is uncomfortable. But that is part of the process. I hand in stuff I'm not proud of all the time. I don't like it, but I do it because you have a deadline. And like, yeah, that means sometimes they get revisions, but that's what supervisors are for, you know. Um, but I find a lot of people who are the hot shots, who are like the best in their class and they do it and they do it. What they struggle with is the sustainability, is to be able to just go, this is okay, right? So we're all struggling with different levels of that same again, what's driving us? What is driving you? Sure, your passion may be driving you, but what's also wrapped up in there? Not being good enough, having someone outdo you, and so we're all struggling with our own demons in our own special way. So somebody really going hardcore, it doesn't mean they have a secret sauce that you need. It means that they're just on a different journey and they're going to find different pros and cons.
Hmm. That's a really insightful way of looking at it, especially considering that, sure, they might get hired faster
Yeah, yeah,
just going out, but then they're gonna slow down once they're at work. So you're
yeah,
gonna catch up eventually. Like it's
yeah.
just gonna be a little slower, but like you said, everyone's at their own pace, and it's not
Everyone,
worth burning
everyone like
yourself
levels up
out.
their skill levels in bars in different ways, right?
Hmm. So we are quite a bit over time here, but there is another
Okay,
question here that I saw a lot of people mentioning in the chat. So
okay,
I think
yeah,
it's going to be very helpful to a lot of people.
sure.
When I take time off, I feel guilty or like I can't relax. Do you have any advice on getting over that? On actually being able to step away from work and leaving that guilt behind?
Yeah. It does get better the more you do it. Okay, like it does get better the more you do it because a lot of what that feeling is like our brain telling us that there's a danger, that doing this is bad, that it's going to result in being left behind, right? Or not working, or you're not, there is something in us that is telling us like, don't do this. That's where it's coming from. And also it could be like, stuff from our childhood, right? Like, um, there's so many things that we need to unpack. But the one thing that we have to do is sort of understand that the feeling that we feel is not necessarily a sign that something is wrong. It's just a sign that our body is trying to communicate with us. It's saying, I don't like this for some reason. So we can't just make the guilt go away. It is a feeling that's kind of, we can't just shove these feelings down. But one thing I learned in like therapy is like we are not our feelings, right? The feeling is something that you can take out and observe and like take and go like, oh wow, I feel guilty. That sucks. It really sucks that I feel guilty about taking time off, right? You can almost take it out and make fun of it, right? Like and acknowledge the fact that like I hate that I have to feel guilty on my time off. That sucks. That's not fun. But when you do it and you follow through with it and your brain can see that there is not a consequence to it, that trains your brain. Our brain is very trainable, especially if you're younger and you got that neuroplasticity, right? Like use it to form your wrinkles. The industry is forming our wrinkles. We are taking that messages and we are carving it in. We can do the same in our own way. And what that means is like following through with actually taking that time off. So yes, that does mean for a while it's going to feel uncomfortable. But if you start now, you're not going to be working on those skills when you're 40 years old going, I feel miserable and I just want to relax. So um, I had to, it does feel weird at first, especially if you do it a lot. But it's kind of like, you get used to it after a while. So honestly, what makes it better is just doing it and
Hmm.
allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable and going, okay, I feel uncomfortable, but the more I do it, And the more I'm kind of chill and not really giving a shit about, maybe not doing the best work before vacation, like that's fine, right? So it does get easier. It takes a bit. It can take years, right? But this is also life. There's no end to this. It's not like you do it and then it's done and then like you're good, right? This is something. It's just skill building over time, just like the art skills you're using, right? The only difference is that these skills are like life skills, but they are just like, you can't learn animation overnight. Like, how can I make a good character animation? What do I do? Well, you practice. It's kind of the same thing, right? Where it is going to be kind of slow and it's going to be kind of annoying and it's not always going to be fun. But if you can recognize it as a skill that is going to keep you healthy and also aid in your career, it's a little bit easier to build. When we start going like, because I know for myself, I don't want to do anything. Like if something benefits just me, I'm like, I don't want to do it. But if it benefits like other things, I'm like, yeah, you know. So part of taking care of ourselves, if you are a very career oriented person and your brain is like, no, I gotta do that, you need to start seeing rest as a requirement for your job, right? You cannot function properly without rest. We are our own tool, right? I want to keep myself sharpened, but I also don't want to break. So just the more you do it, the easier it will get. But yeah, it's a skill over time.
That that reminds me of two things. One, the thing you mentioned about taking out the guilt and analyzing it.
Yeah.
That's such good advice because there's so many times when we feel something and we just react immediately. I feel guilty. I
Yeah.
guess I should be just I'll work again. But
Yeah.
take that time to
That's the
just
fear
take
that
it out.
drives us, right?
Yeah. Like taking that out and just going, okay, why am I feeling guilty? What is it about this? Is there even a reason? And if you can just go, yeah, there's no reason for it. I'm still gonna feel it,
Yeah. Still can feel
but
it.
I can put it aside
Yeah.
and know that I shouldn't be just running back and letting the fear control me. That's such good
Yeah.
advice.
Because that ultimately is the driver to the overworking, right? It's us reacting to the stimuli of this like pressure of like what we don't want to lose. It's a very human human, sort of thing. And this is why like, spreadsheets and management apps aren't going to fix it. You
Hmm.
can't like efficiency your way into proper balance.
The other thing that it reminded me of, if anyone here has seen Dungeon Meshi, Delicious in Dungeon, the anime, there's a quote in there that really hit because am a chronic overworker.
Oh, I know what
And
you're talking
yeah,
about.
it's I'm not gonna do it justice and quote it exactly, but there's the one team that's like, we're rushing through the dungeon, we're just going to the bottom, we're not resting, we're gonna do all-nighters, and then you have the main character go, we're taking it seriously. We're getting our rest. We're eating 3 meals a day.
Three square
We
meals a
are,
day
yeah, we are
for the most
taking this
serious.
seriously because we
Yeah.
want to make it to the end. It's
Mhm.
like, that's animation in a nutshell. You can burn out, but you're not going to make a 60-year career out of it.
Yeah,
If you
and
want to
also
do
like
that.
the career is going to have its ups and downs. I think a lot of
Hmm.
people think his career is like you start and then it keeps going, and it's like there's even the animators we put up on like the even like Nine Old Men or whatever. Like animation and careers have always been interrupted by technology and world events and things like that. You know, but this is exactly why we need to find a grounding within ourselves to navigate this stuff because it's never going to be ideal. It's never going to be perfect. We're never going to have people protecting us from overworking. We have to find out what buttons of ours are getting pushed and trying to figure out a way to not get them pushed, right?
Hmm.
Because somebody will. The thing that drives us to overwork will be taken advantage of. So if we can figure that out, whether it be fear or good intentions, it doesn't matter. It is a button that makes you go, I am going to react and say yes to this thing or do this thing and not think, ooh, but why even am I saying yes? What are the
Hmm.
stakes? Is it important? Is it actually like, what are the pros and cons? Right? And if this skill can be used obviously for multitude of things, but if we do want not just a flash in the pan career, it's a skill that we need to learn.
Hmm. And especially like you said, if the in because the industry is so it has its ups and downs and it changes
Yep.
on a dime at times.
Yep.
When are you going to be better suited to react to that change? When you're frazzled and burnt out and like at your wits' end already?
Yep.
Or when you're rested and relaxed and can go, okay, change
Yep.
happened. Let's correct this. Let's course correct.
Yeah, because there will a lot of people are waiting for the next thing, right? Ooh, I'll
Hmm.
work really hard, and then once I'm done school, then I'll be fine. Ooh, but it's my first job, so then I gotta work really good, because then if I don't do that, then it won't be good. Oh well, now I have to keep working that way because they expect it of me. So if I don't, it can be so much. There can always be a reason for us to overwork. Well,
Hmm.
listen, we're creative. We're all creative. You think we can't figure out a reason to do this? Of course we can. But we need to start thinking of reasons not to do it
Hmm.
because again, we want to work. You want to work. I don't, when people start on my team, I go, I already know you're primed to overwork. People come into this industry ready to overwork. So I don't need to talk to anybody about overworking because I know they're going to do it without me saying anything, which is why we need to tell people and tell all of us to, ooh, be prepared that you are conditioned to overwork. You're
Hmm.
going to start that way by default, which means that you're actually closer to burnout than you think.
Yes. It's
So
not very far off.
yeah,
It
it's not that far off, right? So and you, and you're not always going to succeed. I had a really big, like I had my really big crash. But even the year after that, I had another one, not as big, but I went, oh, I did it again. I put my head down and
Mhm.
started working and started doing overtime because I had to solve problems and I started getting bad again. So I caught myself, right? So it's again, it's a skill. It's not a you do this and it's good. It's just, like drawing, like art, like anything. You'll get better at it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and taking the extra time to answer all the questions.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm
This
I'm glad I could answer the questions.
this is one of my favorite topics of all time because like I mentioned, I'm a chronic overworker that took way too long to figure out just how bad it is and just how it helps no one.
Yeah,
It just
yeah, it's like the road to
hurts
hell
more
is
than
paved with good
anything.
intentions. It really doesn't help
Exactly.
anyone. Yeah,
Yeah, that the thing you mentioned about one of the reasons is good intentions is like, ooh, that
yeah,
hit. I felt that one. But
no.
really, thank you so much for taking the time for giving this amazing talk. It was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you so much for inviting me and letting me talk about this topic. And thanks to everybody in the chat. I hope this helped. I hope this gives, some validation to the struggles and stuff like that. And yeah, keep healthy, keep your heads above water, and the industry will recover. It's not going to look like what it looked like before, but it's going to be something brand new. And we really have a chance to break some cycles and do some new stuff. So I'm very
Make it
excited
a
for
better
animation's
you.
future. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you all around. Take
Thanks.
care.
Bye, everybody.